6:17 local, Strait of Hormuz. Captain Daniel Reeves is rolling his A-10C Thunderbolt II into a lazy surveillance orbit above black water and steel-gray tankers. In 3 minutes, everything he knows about permissive overwatch will be shattered. 2 Iranian F-14 Tomcats are already tracking him. This is how a perfect trap begins. The morning looks deceptively calm. First light is spilling across the water east of Keshem Island. Commercial traffic is already stacking through the narrow shipping lanes. Giant crude carriers pushing north, container ships sliding south, their wakes cutting white scars across the dark sea. The Strait of Hormuz, at its narrowest, is only about 21 nautical miles wide. On paper, that's a line on a chart. In reality, it is one of the most important choke points on Earth. You're a place where a single mistake can spike oil prices, trigger military alerts from Bahrain to Washington, and put thousands of people one bad decision away from catastrophe. Imagine you're here, salt in the air, tanker horns in the distance, heat already building over the Iranian coast. To your north, Bandar Abbas, one of Iran's key naval and air hubs. To your south, the waters watched by U.S. Fifth Fleet and coalition aircraft. Above it all, invisible layers of surveillance. Civilian radars, military radars, data links, electronic support measures, satellites, patrol aircraft, and operators staring at screens in chilled command rooms hundreds of miles away. Reeves is flying a real workhorse in a very unreal situation. His A-10C, call sign Hawg 11, launched earlier from Al Dhafra Air Base in the United Arab Emirates. I'm part of a fictional surge of maritime security patrols after weeks of rising tension, drone harassment, tanker interference, and dangerous intercepts. The Warthog is old, ugly, heavily armored, and brutally effective at low altitude. It carries a 30mm GAU-8/A Avenger cannon that sounds like the sky ripping open, 2 AIM-9X sidewinders for self-defense, an ALQ-184 electronic countermeasures pod, and enough toughness to absorb punishment that would kill lighter aircraft. But let's be honest, the A-10 was not built for a knife fight against interceptors over contested water. That matters because 96 nautical miles away, at Bandar Abbas, 2 Iranian Air Force F-14 Tomcats are climbing into the morning sky. That alone is enough to make any military analyst pay attention. The F-14 is a relic from another era. A Cold War heavyweight made famous by carrier decks and long-range radar. Iran is the only operator in the world still flying it. The airframes are old, sustainment is hard, parts are scarce, but the platform still carries psychological weight, and in the right conditions it can still be dangerous. Large radar, long reach, big presence. In the hands of experienced crews, especially when supported by ground control, it can still create a lethal problem. Now, from the enemy's view, the plan looks smart, clean, calculated. A civilian distress call has been spoofed near the traffic separation lane east of Larak Island. At the same time, several fast boats move in patterns just ambiguous enough to force attention without openly crossing the line into obvious attack. It is bait. The objective is not to sink a ship. Not yet. And the objective is to pull one American aircraft lower, closer, and farther east than normal, into a surveillance pocket, into range brackets already studied, into a zone where geography, radar clutter, coastal missiles, and political hesitation can all be used as weapons. The 2 Tomcats are not acting alone. They're part of a wider fictional ambush architecture. A Gadir over-the-horizon radar site farther inland is feeding broad queuing. Mobile air defense elements near the coast are listening. Ground controllers are tracking commercial traffic, trying to use the congestion below as a visual and electronic shield. Their strategic calculation is brutal in its simplicity. Isolate a slow American aircraft, force a kill or near kill inside a confused maritime picture, and then flood the information space before the United States can control the narrative. They believe they can succeed for 3 reasons. First, the A-10 is slow. Maximum speed, roughly 420 knots, not much margin when fighters come screaming down from altitude. Second, the Hormuz air picture is crowded. Tanker radars, civilian transponders, island clutter, fishing traffic, maritime patrols. Enough noise to complicate response in the opening seconds. Third, American rules of engagement in a politically sensitive corridor are never casual. Every shot has consequences. Every second of hesitation can be exploited. And this is where the trap starts to feel perfect. 2 Tomcats, 1 Warthog, congested airspace, coastal support, political ambiguity, a prey aircraft exactly where they want it. But they overlooked something. Actually, on several things. They assumed the A-10 was the center of the story. It wasn't. It was the visible piece, the piece they could see, the piece they wanted to kill. The real story was already unfolding above and beyond them in layers they either underestimated or never fully detected. At 34,000 feet southwest of the strait, a U.S. Air Force E-3 Sentry has been orbiting, its rotating radar painting the entire battlespace. Farther back, analysts at Al Udeid are correlating emissions from coastal sites with infrared tracks and prior pattern analysis. A pair of F-35As at Al Dhafra have been on strip alert since dawn. An MQ-9 farther south has been watching boat movements, and every unusual radar pulse coming off the Iranian coast is being compared, time-stamped, filtered, and pushed across the network. The flaw in their thinking is not that the Tomcats are harmless, it's that they mistake visibility for vulnerability. They can see the A-10. The Americans can see nearly everything. At 0621 and 14 seconds, one of the F-14 goes active for a brief sweep. Only seconds. Enough. The E-3 flags the emission. Operators compare it against prior libraries. Track confidence rises. At 6:21 and 31 seconds, both Tomcats turn south-southeast in a geometry that no routine patrol should use. At 6:22, a controller at the Combined Air Operations Center issues the first warning to Hawg 11. Hawg 11, picture has changed. Two bandits, north-northeast, fast movers, Angels 3-2, tracking south. Reeves doesn't answer right away. He already knows. His radar warning receiver has begun to chirp. And now you're in that cockpit. Canopy vibrating. Sun low over the water. Tankers below. Voice traffic suddenly crisp, clipped, sharper than before. You scan left, then right, then instruments. You know the math. An F-14 high and fast has options. You, low and alone, do not have many. At 6:22 and 40 seconds, the fake distress call is confirmed as fraudulent. At 6:22 and 51 seconds, the nearest U.S. destroyer in the Gulf updates its air picture and assigns weapons quality tracking to the Tomcats. At 6:23, Al Dhafra launches the F-35 pair. Not to investigate, not to posture, to intercept. 4 seconds. That's all between ambiguity and intent. The Tomcats descend in a loose bracket, one offset west, one east, trying to force the A-10 to split its attention. Classic stalking geometry. One predator holds high, the other angles for pressure. Ground control wants the American pilot to do one thing above all else: climb. If he climbs, he becomes cleaner on radar, easier to sort, easier to engage. But Reeves does something else. He drops. The A-10 rolls hard left, nose slicing down toward the cluttered maritime corridor. Altitude unwinds fast. 8,000 feet, 4,000, 2,000, then under 500 feet above the water using ship wakes, island background, and sheer chaos to muddy the picture. The Warthog is not graceful, but at low altitude it can be stubbornly difficult to kill. He punches chaff, changes heading, cuts across the bow of a tanker at a legal but terrifying distance, heart pounding. This is real. Could you make that call? Dive lower over one of the busiest waterways on Earth, knowing a single misjudgment could put you into the sea or into a ship's mast? Because that's what survival looks like right now. At 6:24 and 19 seconds, the Western Tomcat commits. Its radar locks. Seconds later, a long-range missile leaves the rail in a burst of smoke and flame, dropping for an instant before the motor ignites and drives it southward. Whether you call it a Phoenix derivative or a locally sustained long-range weapon, the effect is the same: a spear thrown from altitude, guided into a cluttered, fast-changing battle space. This is where many people get it wrong. They imagine air combat as clean geometry on a map. It isn't. It's compression, noise, fear, instruments, and instinct. The missile is descending from thin, cold air into warm, dense maritime haze. Its seeker is fighting reflections from ships, waves, and land. Reeves is jinking through a corridor full of returns. He dumps more chaff. The ALQ-184 goes to work. The missile overshoots the first predicted intercept point, corrects, loses enough confidence, and detonates harmlessly off his right rear quarter, showering the sea with fragments. One shot missed. The trap is still alive. The Eastern Tomcat presses lower. Too low. Too eager. There's the overconfidence. They thought the first shot would force panic. They thought the A-10 would flee south in a straight line. They thought the spectacle of a Warthog being run down over Hormuz would become a regional showcase. A demonstration of control, a performance staged for the world. Instead, Hawg 11 turns back inside the bracket. Not a dogfight, not a duel. A survival maneuver that throws the geometry off for 2 critical beats. At 0625 and 07 seconds, the second Tomcat fires. Shorter range, better angle, more dangerous. Now Reeves sees nothing, but his threat tone changes pitch. He slams the throttles, banks hard, skims over whitecaps so low that spray seems almost close enough to touch. The missile screams down, loses clean look-down discrimination in the clutter, and detonates after passing through the chaff plume behind him. 2 launches, 2 failures. But that doesn't mean safety. It means time. Seconds bought with discipline. And those seconds matter because the battle space is changing everywhere at once. The E-3 is feeding updates. The destroyer's spy radar is tracking. The F-35s are climbing through 20,000 feet. Their AN/APG-81 radars and passive sensors building a picture the Tomcats do not fully understand. An EA-18G Growler from a carrier air wing farther southeast is retasked to support, pushing into range to complicate Iranian emissions. But information dominance is not a slogan here. It is the difference between seeing a fight and walking blindly into one. At 6:26, the Western Tomcat lights up again, trying to sort the now chaotic picture below. That decision may have felt necessary in the cockpit. Operationally, it is fatal, because the moment it radiates, it becomes a bright, undeniable signature in a network already waiting for proof of hostile intent. The legal threshold is crossed. The command chain compresses. Identification confirmed. Missile launches recorded. The hostile act is established. Authorization comes fast. Not emotional, not theatrical, professional. Defend the aircraft. Neutralize the threat. Prevent follow-on attack. Now the hunt reverses. The lead F-35, callsign Viper 31, never needs to announce itself. That's the terror of 5th-generation air combat. One moment the Tomcat crews believe they are controlling the engagement. The next, they are being watched by aircraft they still do not have a clean track on. Viper 31 and 32 are approaching from the southwest, high subsonic, carrying AIM-120Ds. Their sensors have already fused inputs from the E-3 offboard radar and passive detections. Less time than your morning coffee. That's how fast the script flips. At 6:27 and 11 seconds, Viper 31 launches the first AMRAAM from beyond visual range. No dramatic turn, no close-in merge, just a clean release and a weapon accelerating toward a Tomcat crew that still thinks the main problem is below them. The Western F-14 brakes too late. Its RWR screams. The pilot dumps countermeasures and banks hard north. But old airframes bleed energy. As big wings help, then punish. The missile adjusts in the terminal phase and detonates just off the left side of the aircraft. Fire erupts along the fuselage. Seconds later, the Tomcat disintegrates into falling wreckage over water east of Keshem. 1 down. The second Tomcat finally understands the scale of the miscalculation. Now, from that cockpit. You launched. You missed. Your wingman is gone. You know there are stealth fighters in the picture, but you don't know where. Ground control is shouting. Your radar is compromised by jamming and fear. Behind you is coast. Ahead of you is sea. Somewhere in the gaps between those facts is death. The surviving Tomcat turns hard north, trying to drag the fight back toward Iranian air defenses. Smart move. Too late. Viper 32 does not chase recklessly. This is where training and system integration become ruthless. The F-35 holds outside the most dangerous surface-to-air envelopes while maintaining track quality through fused sensors. The Growler begins to smear parts of the threat spectrum. The destroyer keeps the entire corridor under observation. Hawg 11, still alive, hauls south-southwest and descends to safer airspace under escort vectors. At 06:28 and 34 seconds, the second AMRAAM goes out. The surviving Tomcat tries every classic answer: dive, beam, chaff, turn cold. But a modern missile with solid off-board cueing is not easily shrugged off. It drives through the maneuver, detonates aft of the target, and shreds the right engine section. The aircraft stays intact just long enough to suggest the crew might save it. Then the jet rolls, nose drops, and both crew eject over the northern Gulf. In 9 minutes, 2 interceptors went from hunters to wreckage. But the story isn't over, because the Tomcats were never the whole trap. Coastal radars are still lit. Missile batteries are still postured. Fast boats are still maneuvering below. And once hostile intent has been demonstrated in a corridor this sensitive, Commanders do not assume the danger has passed. They assume there is a second layer. That's when the counterattack is authorized. Not a war declaration, not regime change. A calculated demonstration designed to erase the immediate kill chain. CENTCOM orders a limited retaliatory strike against the systems directly supporting the ambush. 1 radar node, 2 fire control positions, 1 command and control bunker. By-end runway infrastructure at Bandar Abbas assessed to support the Tomcat launch. This is where modern power becomes overwhelming. Within minutes, assets from multiple domains are synchronized. The F-35 pair remains forward to sanitize airspace and provide targeting refinement. 4 F/A-18E. Super Hornets from a carrier strike group in the Arabian Sea are pushed north with standoff weapons. A destroyer in the Gulf assigns Tomahawk land attack missiles. Cyber and electronic warfare teams begin suppressing specific nodes in the fictional battle space. Tankers reposition. AWACS expands the track net. No wasted motion, no improvisation, just a machine shifting gears. For every one of theirs, many of ours. That ratio tells you everything about escalation dominance. At 6:34, the first standoff weapons arrive. But a Tomahawk punches into a coastal radar complex inland from Bandar Abbas, collapsing the building in a bloom of dust and orange light. Seconds later, another weapon tears through a command van park beside a revetment line. F-35s roll in from altitude and release small-diameter bombs onto 2 mobile fire control radars that had been cueing the ambush architecture. One disappears in a white flash. The second tries to relocate. It doesn't get far. Then come the runway cuts. This matters more than people realize. Destroying an aircraft in the air is tactical. Denying launches afterward is operational. Precision-guided weapons crater the Bandar Abbas runway at multiple intervals, forcing closure. Taxiway exits are damaged. Fuel servicing areas burn. A hardened communications node near the flight line takes a direct hit. Not random destruction. A systematic erasure of immediate capability. Could this have gone wider? Absolutely. That is what makes the Strait so dangerous. Every operator in the region understands the ladder of escalation. Every shot carries the risk of the next 10. That's why the response is limited by design. Brutal, yes, but narrow, measured to destroy the trap without opening every door at once. Meanwhile, Hawg 11 limps southwest with shrapnel scoring along the tail and fuselage. The aircraft is damaged but flyable. Reeves is breathing hard, answering checklists, listening to controllers, probably replaying the last 6 minutes again and again in his head. Each of those pilots in the sky, on both sides, is not a symbol, not a thumbnail, not a headline. They are human beings in machines moving faster than fear can fully process, each with families waiting. On each one decision away from history. At sea level, the tanker crews finally understand how close they came. Merchant captains report missile plumes. Lookouts describe parachutes in the northern Gulf. Insurance markets will notice by noon. Energy traders will notice faster. By 6:59, the fictional operation is effectively over. 42 minutes from first hostile track to final strike assessment. Here's the tally. How many Tomcats launched? 2. How many returned? None. How many air-to-air missiles fired at the A-10? 2 confirmed, both defeated. How many U.S. aircraft lost? 0. How much damage did the Warthog take? Moderate fragmentation and superficial structural damage, but the pilot survived. How many supporting nodes were hit in retaliation? 1 radar complex, 2 fire control elements, 1 command post, and multiple runway sections. Strategic outcome? Total failure for the ambush. And that is the lesson. The Tomcats were not beaten because they were old. Age matters, but that is not the whole answer. They were beaten because they entered a battle space where information moved faster than aircraft. They tried to stage a predator-prey encounter in an era where one visible target can be backed by an invisible web of sensors, data links, electronic warfare, and precision response. They built a trap for a single airplane and walked into a network. Modern warfare is not just about who has the sharper missile or the faster jet. It's about who sees first, who understands first, who decides first, and who can connect those steps under pressure. In the Strait of Hormuz, where distance is short and consequences are global, that sequence matters more than ever. And there's another lesson here too. The A-10 survives not because it is magical and not because its enemies are incompetent. It survives because a pilot used discipline under pressure, because the air crew above him trusted the system, and because the system itself was built to absorb chaos without breaking. Training, integration, response speed, information dominance. In a crisis, those words stop being theory. They become life. So when people ask whether legacy platforms still matter, or whether old fighters can still be dangerous, or whether choke points like Hormuz could ignite in minutes, this fictional scenario gives you the answer. Yes, yes, and absolutely yes. The perfect trap failed because it was never really one-sided. It only looked that way at first glance. Which decision was most critical? The A-10's dive to the deck, the Tomcat radar activation, or the rapid authorization for counterstrike? Debate below. Hit subscribe for in-depth military breakdowns.